The merciless late afternoon sun beat down on the steaming asphalt of a rural Massachusetts road as Maya Johnson trudged home from school. The 10-year-old slowed when a gleaming red Shelby GT 500 Mustang came into view, its hood yawning wide like a hungry mouth. A white man in an expensive suit paced beside it, his phone pressed tight to his ear, barking about tow truck delays and an urgent meeting with the governor. His frustration painted him in sharp strokes against the quiet countryside. Most kids Maya's age would have walked on. Her Aunt Renee always warned her about talking to strangers, especially wealthy, out-of-place ones like this, stranded in a town where nearly everyone was black and barely scraping by. But something about the man's panic pulled her in. Shifting the weight of her frayed backpack, she stepped closer. Inside was a small tool kit gifted by Uncle Leon, a mechanic who'd taught her engines before she even learned fractions. She called out politely and offered help. The man, Andrew Whitaker, CEO and real estate tycoon, turned around, irritation flaring before fading into disbelief at the sight of a scrawny girl in oversized MIT t-shirt and braids. With a scoff, he dismissed her offer, citing the high-performance nature of his car. But Maya, unfazed, was already peering under the hood, nimble and confident. She explained her background, the garage she helped in, and soon Andrew found himself detailing the issue. The engine had overheated and shut down. Maya sniffed the air, nodded, and pointed to a coolant leak beneath the car. Her diagnosis was swift, her hands steady. Impressed despite himself, Andrew watched her work, noting the calm authority in her tone. There was something oddly familiar in the way she squinted in concentration, the way her eyes flicked across the engine. She introduced herself as Maya Johnson. He took her hand, now stained with grease, and introduced himself in return. From her backpack, Maya produced a kit and patched the radiator hose with practiced ease, advising him to refill the coolant once he reached town. That's when it happened. Maya raised her hand to tuck a braid behind her ear, and sunlight caught on the ring she wore. An emerald stone in an antique gold setting, held on by thread to fit her tiny finger. Andrew froze. That ring. The crescent-shaped flaw in the gem sparkled like a ghost from the past. It was unmistakable. He had given that ring 12 years ago to a little girl named Maya, a promise from a young man full of good intentions who never returned. The orphanage, Little Angels, had closed shortly after. The weight of memory threatened to choke him. Maya explained the ring had belonged to her adoptive mother, Diana, who'd passed the previous year. Diana had called it a symbol of something important, a truth Maya would understand one day. Swallowing the rising storm in his chest, Andrew offered her a ride home. She hesitated, then nodded. During the short drive, he asked her about school, life, who she lived with now. She answered with casual openness. Aunt Renee and Uncle Leon had taken her in. She'd lived in town since she was 3, and before that, well, not much was ever said about before. Just that she came from Little Angels. When she said the name, Andrew nearly swerved off the road. He steadied himself, pretending not to react, but inside, alarms were ringing. They pulled into the driveway of a small but well-tended house. Before Maya left, Andrew handed her a card, his voice suddenly gentler, urgent beneath the calm. If she ever needed anything, he told her, anything at all, to call. She took the card with quiet curiosity, thanked him, and darted toward the porch, waving once before slipping inside. He sat motionless in the car, heart racing. The ring sparkled in his mind like a flare in the dark. As soon as she was gone, he reached for his phone. His private investigator would need to start digging, immediately. That girl, that chance encounter, had just torn open the lid of a long-buried past. One that linked a billionaire's legacy, a shuttered orphanage, and a young girl with an uncanny ability to mend what was broken. For the next 3 nights, Andrew Whitaker barely slept. He studied enlarged photographs of the emerald ring, now confirmed by his investigator. It was the same one. The same ring he had slipped onto the finger of a small child in an orphanage hallway, promising he'd come back. But he never did. Documents began surfacing on his desk, familiar ones. Property acquisitions, financial irregularities, and records from 12 years ago when Little Angels was mysteriously sold for a fraction of its worth. His father, Howard Whitaker, had orchestrated the entire deal. The dots connected faster than he could process. Soon after that acquisition, Andrew had been named CEO. The same land was now the future home of the Horizon Project, a luxury development backed by Whitaker Enterprises. The very place where an orphanage once stood, and where one little girl had been left behind. In his office, Andrew gathered himself as his assistant entered. The legal counsel arrived with Horizon Project documents in hand, along with the old property records from Little Angels. The past, once buried under asphalt and ambition, had clawed its way back into the light. Andrew slipped the reports into a drawer just in time, masking the storm behind his composed face. No one in the room knew it yet, but the truth was no longer hidden. And the little girl who had once been left behind was no longer just a memory. She was a spark. And she had just reignited everything. As the documents piled up in front of him, Andrew Whitaker's pulse quickened. Pages revealed a chilling trail: suspicious bank transfers, closed-door acquisitions, and worst of all, a list of children reallocated after the closure of Little Angels Orphanage. One name was circled in red: Maya Johnson. Beside it, a handwritten note in firm script: special case. Contact H.W. His investigator, Ramirez, called with an update. Diana Johnson had died in a car accident the previous year, failed brakes, under suspicious circumstances. Adoption records were missing. Officially, Maya Johnson never existed at Little Angels. Andrew, now convinced of a deeper conspiracy, ordered Ramirez to dig into Maya's current family without delay. Meanwhile, Maya found peace in the modest workshop behind her aunt and uncle's house. The scent of oil, the neatly arranged tools, the quiet, it was her world. Leon entered, smiling at the sight of his niece hunched over a 1950s radio. She lifted it proudly, declaring it fixed. Leon ruffled her braids and told her again what he always did: she had a gift. Machines simply made sense to her in a way few people could understand. She hesitated for a moment, then mentioned the man with the broken Mustang. The rich one who'd seemed so startled by her ring. Leon's face stiffened when he heard the name: Andrew Whitaker. He exchanged a tense glance with Renee, who had just stepped in. That night, everything changed. Sitting with Maya in the dim living room, her aunt and uncle finally shared the story they had promised to keep until the time was right. Diana hadn't just been a loving adoptive mother, she had once been a nurse at Little Angels. When the orphanage abruptly shut down, she had fled with Maya in the dead of night, changing names, moving constantly, always hiding. It was the only way to protect her. Renee handed Maya a yellowed envelope, her voice shaking. Diana had left it with instructions: give it to Maya only if someone from the Whitaker family came looking. Maya opened it slowly. Inside was a letter. My dear Maya, if you are reading this, someone has found you. There are things you need to know. Back in Boston, Andrew's phone lit up again. Ramirez had more news. Someone else was investigating Little Angels, a reporter named Marcus Hayes. He had uncovered disturbing theories: the orphanage may have been part of a secret initiative, targeting children with unusual abilities. The next morning, a sleek black SUV parked outside Maya's school. Inside, two men in suits watched her laughing with her friends. One nodded. This was the girl with the emerald ring. She needed to be brought in immediately. But they weren't alone. Across the street, Leon sat behind the wheel of his truck, already dialing a number Diana had given him years ago. The line connected. Marcus Hayes. It's about Little Angels. And a girl with an emerald ring. I found the proof you've been looking for. At Whitaker Enterprises, Andrew stood across from his father, Howard, who had returned from Florida unexpectedly. The mood was volatile. Howard's voice rose as he demanded answers about the revisiting of old records. Andrew answered flatly: he had found Maya Johnson. The emerald ring. The child Howard had marked as valuable. Howard sneered. She was just another orphan. What mattered was Project Horizon, the multi-billion-dollar development tied to that very land. But Andrew wasn't buying it anymore. He spoke slowly, choosing each word with care. Maya had a gift. She could look at something broken and see how to fix it. Howard's smile turned cold. That was precisely the point. Some children had value beyond imagination. That's why they had bought little angels. For the talent. For the patents. For power. But Maya was already ahead of them. At home, she sat reading the letter from Diana. It explained everything, the experiments, the ring, the buried truths. The emerald wasn't just a keepsake. It was a key. Within it was access to a set of hidden documents, evidence that could collapse an empire built on the exploitation of innocent children. The pieces were finally aligning. On one side, Whitaker Enterprises and the secrets it would kill to protect. On the other, a young girl armed with determination, a hidden legacy, and a ring more dangerous than anyone realized. And between them stood Andrew, a man now forced to choose what kind of legacy he would leave behind. In the towering conference room on the 50th floor of Whitaker Enterprises, tension crackled like a live wire. Executives whispered nervously. Howard paced with fury. "Where is my son?" he thundered. Right then, the doors opened. Andrew entered, calm and composed, followed by a woman in a tailored suit. "Sorry I'm late," Andrew said. "This is Federal Prosecutor Claire Bennett. She has questions about Project Prometheus." A visible shiver passed through the room. Project Prometheus, the codename for the program that identified and exploited gifted children. Howard's face turned ghostly. That name wasn't meant to exist outside a sealed vault. Andrew connected his laptop to the screen. The room darkened. The presentation began. Documents. Footage. Photos. Financial records. Test results. Falsified identities. A record of 48 children who had been taken, tested, and rehomed. And one nurse who had dared to run. Howard tried to rally. He accused his son of corporate betrayal, of stealing confidential documents. Andrew barely flinched. What had been done wasn't just unethical, it was criminal. Unauthorized experiments. Tampered adoption records. Witness silencing. And then the video played. Diana, running in the dark with a small child. And Howard giving the order to retrieve her. "She has military potential. We can't lose her." 3 employees had died within weeks. One of them was Diana's brother. Howard started to speak, but the door opened again. Maya entered. She stood in the doorway, flanked by Leon and Marcus Hayes, now holding a camera. Her voice, though young, carried the weight of truth. "You didn't have to come," Andrew said. "Yes, I did," Maya replied. "Diana always said I would have to face the men who made us run." Howard looked at her, and recognition flickered in his eyes. Then calculation. She was Project 17. The prodigy. "You're the man who killed my mother," she said. Her voice didn't waver. Her brakes didn't fail, did they? Howard smiled with that same cold arrogance. Proving anything would be impossible, he warned. His name could make any of this disappear with a single call. That's when Maya reached into her backpack. She removed the emerald ring, turned the gem with steady fingers, and clicked open the hidden compartment. Inside was something that would change everything. Maya held the tiny device in her hand. "Diana was smarter than you thought," she said, her voice steady. "This is a storage device." She hid it inside the ring. "It holds backup copies of everything, Little Angel's records, adoption logs, even recordings of your meetings with military doctors. All of it. including plans to use children with enhanced cognitive abilities for strategic military applications. For the first time in his life, Howard Whittaker said nothing. "This is being broadcast live," Marcus Hayes added, motioning to the camera. "Directly to our studio and across every major social platform. Over 10,000 people are already watching." Andrew stepped toward his father, voice low. "It's over. The prosecutor has offered me a deal, full cooperation in exchange for immunity." He paused. "As for you, we'll let a jury decide." Federal agents entered the room. Howard Whittaker, titan of industry, was placed under arrest as the world watched his empire begin to crumble. Maya stepped forward. "My mother taught me that broken machines can be fixed," she said. "But broken people have to fix themselves. I hope you get that chance in prison." As Howard was led out, the room was silent except for the whir of camera equipment. What had once been a fortress of power was now a crime scene. In the weeks that followed, Whittaker Enterprises collapsed. Stock prices plummeted. Investigations uncovered decades of corruption, experimentation, and unethical practices buried beneath a polished corporate exterior. Andrew watched it all unfold, not with pride, but with quiet resolution. He had lost his inheritance and the family name he once sought to protect. But in its place, he found something better, the integrity he had nearly forgotten. Outside the courthouse, Maya met him on the steps. "What happens now?" she asked, the emerald ring gleaming, no longer a secret, but a symbol of truth. Andrew looked at the skyline. The Whittaker building still stood tall, but its name would soon be gone. "Now," he said, "we rebuild. Not just buildings, lives." What no one realized in that moment was how far that rebuilding would go. The story wasn't ending. It was only beginning. 5 years later. It was a bright spring morning. Maya Johnson, now 15, walked confidently through the corridors of the newly opened Johnson Center for Young Inventors, a sprawling campus of labs, workshops, and classrooms built on the very grounds where Little Angels Orphanage once stood. "The sensors in the East Wing are still acting up," she said to a group of engineers trailing behind her. Her eyes scanned the walls, identifying issues most adults missed. The same instinct that once fixed a stranger's car by the side of the road now powered an institution built to nurture young minds. At the far end of the campus, Andrew Whittaker met with visiting investors. The billionaire heir who once stood in boardrooms now wore rolled-up sleeves and a modest smile. He had donated his entire personal fortune to launch the Prometheus Initiative, a global program that identified and supported exceptional talent from marginalized communities. "We found 23 new kids this quarter," Andrew told the group. "Each one gets full mentorship and support. No contracts. No surveillance. No secrets." His transformation surprised many, especially those who once profited from the system he helped dismantle. "Maya's about to publish her third patent," said Leon, now head of the engineering division. "Harvard, MIT, and Stanford are already fighting over her." On the center's main wall, an exhibit told the whole story: photographs of the old orphanage, headlines about the fall of Whittaker Enterprises, and the video that changed everything. Beneath it, a title read, "When a Child with a Ring Brought Down an Empire." In a federal prison, Howard Whittaker sat in silence. The man who once controlled billions now lived in a gray cell, surrounded by nothing. His allies were gone. His name, tarnished. A guard passed his cell and shook his head. "He still thinks he'll get out. Rebuild it all. Same old delusions." The arrogance that once built an empire had curdled into bitterness. He refused to attend rehab or counseling. He was alone, a man undone by the very legacy he tried to control. That night, the Johnson Center held its first major graduation ceremony. 12 students, each from disadvantaged backgrounds, walked across the stage to receive job offers, scholarships, and applause. Maya, though too young to graduate herself, was already a mentor and role model. She stepped up to the podium. When I was 10, she began, I fixed a broken car for a stranger. That small act exposed a web of secrets. But it also sparked something better. She held up the emerald ring, now a symbol of transformation. My adoptive mother, Diana, used to say that broken machines can be fixed, but broken systems must be redesigned from the ground up. That's what we're doing here. Not just fixing the past. We're building something new. Andrew, watching from the back, felt his eyes sting. The girl who had unraveled everything he thought he knew had also given him the purpose he'd been searching for. The next morning, Maya received a letter. The sender, Victoria Whitaker. Howard's daughter. A federal prosecutor now, who had publicly renounced the family name after the scandal. Maya, the letter read. We found 5 more orphanages with programs like Little Angels. Thanks to your testimony, we've identified and protected 37 children. Some have talents like yours. When you're ready, they'd love to meet you. Maya read the letter aloud to Andrew, Leon, and Renee. The room fell quiet. It had all started with a broken-down car. And now, it was reshaping the future. You know what's funny? Andrew said softly. Howard always said he was building a legacy. And he did, just not the one he imagined. Maya glanced outside at the children playing in the center's gardens, their laughter echoing in the air. Real power, she said, was never in buildings or bank accounts. It's in the ability to make a difference. That evening, as the sun set over the Johnson Center, a new sign was unveiled at the entrance. Every talent deserves to flourish. Every child deserves freedom. It wasn't just a slogan. It was a promise. A future rewritten, by truth, courage, and the quiet brilliance of a girl with a gift.